folks, welcome back to the channel. So today I'm basically going to be jumping on a bandwagon. Recently I've seen quite a few content creators posting about their favourite standalone fantasies. That combined with, I mentioned a standalone fantasy in my last video, which was the booktube cat tag, had me thinking like, well, what's my favourite standalone fantasies? So I decided to go through my shelves, pick out my favourite ones, and share them with you. So that's what we're gonna do. Yeah, so without any further avail, I was gonna say in no particular order, but these are in a weird order. They're not a weird order, but they are in an order. They're not an order of preference, but basically for all of my books that I've read, I put them in alphabetical order by author's last name and then publication date. So I literally just went through my shelves and went you and you and you. So these are in, I'm basically giving you them in reverse alphabetical order by author, because that's the way that I popped them on the pile. So yeah, anyway, let's just start. The first one, now this is a book that was published in the early 80s, and it is possibly the only time you are going to hear me recommend the book of the film. The film came out first, then the book was written. The book, and I know part of me loves this book because I love the film, but it is still incredible. The book in itself it works on its own. You could read it as its own. And that is The Dark Crystal by A.C.H. Smith. So if you're not familiar with The Dark Crystal, it follows Jen, who is the last of the Gelflings, and he is basically tasked by it's basically his master's dying wish, essentially. He is tasked with the mission. I'm struggling for words right now. But he's basically given the task of healing the Dark Crystal, which is, you can hear Maisie in the background, I apologise. Maisie! No, come on then. Jen is tasked with the mission to heal the Dark Crystal, which is currently being controlled by the evil Skeksis. And yeah, chaos and mayhem ensue. It is an absolutely beautiful story. It is like, yeah, Jim Henson at his absolute finest. But the book just adds at times where the film couldn't get across. It adds some emotion that film couldn't get across, and honestly, it's absolutely brilliant. Okay, the next one. As a caveat, I should add, none of the books that I'm talking to you about today are books I've read this year. You've heard me speak about one or two of them before, but not in any great depth. I didn't want to include, to be fair, I've not read a huge amount of standalone fantasies this year, other than the ones I've gotten with my fairy loot. And I didn't want to add anything that I've read relatively recently, because I don't know how well they're going to stay with me. Everything I've read here is at least 2 years minimum since I last read them. So yeah, anyway, moving on. Next, I've got The Unlikely Escape of Uriah Heep by H.G. Parry. This basically follows the main character, Charlie, who has this ability to bring characters from books to life. Which he obviously is doing his best to keep under control and keep hidden and not let anyone know, because let's face it, this is set in the real world and we would not treat that nicely because we're humans and we're not great. But yeah, he has the ability to characters alive, and we basically follow him and his brother, who's helping him track down Uriah Heep to get him back in the book, because someone else has let him loose. So there's at least one other person with the ability to bring characters out. Throughout this, we meet some brand new characters, and we meet a lot of familiar characters. This is, I think, one of my favorite things about this is that it shows that we can all read the same book and all take something different from it, all come away with slightly different perspective. Because at one point we're in this area where it's all fictional characters that have been brought to life, that are just kind of like hiding away from the world and going about their business. And there is a flat in this area that has like 4 or 5 Mr. Darcy's, and all Mr. Darcy's are recognized. They are all recognizably Mr. Darcy, but they are all individual and unique. And I think it's just one of the best ways of showing that we all come away with different perspectives. I absolutely fell in love with this book. I was pretty much hooked from the word go. It's just, yeah, the character work in it is brilliant, both new and familiar characters, combined with that the world building of essentially building a new world within our own world. Yeah, it has an amazing plot. I really enjoyed it. It was brilliant. Some of the twists, I mean, some of them I saw coming. By the end, you're like, okay, right, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But some of it, we were like, I maybe should have seen that coming, but I didn't. So, yeah, if you're looking for like a more contemporary fantasy, this, absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I don't see enough people talking about this. I don't know why. The next one is one that I spoke about a while ago in, I did a recommendation video for books that made me hungry. And that is Sunshine by Robin McKinley. I read this in probably the height of my paranormal romance phase. And it just stands out so well from a haze of a lot of books that felt very samey at one point. It starts off and you're like, right, okay, here we go. Standard paranormal romance. Okay, let's just do this. So it starts off with Sunshine. She basically wakes up trapped in this room. Like she's been knocked unconscious at one point. She's been all dressed up in like a nice silk red dress. She's chained to the wall and within very easy reaching distance of a hungry vampire. She's obviously meant to be his prey, his bait. The vampire manages to resist eating her. They start chatting. They formulate a plan to escape and try and keep him alive. They have to try and figure out like they know who the enemies are, but they have to try and figure out how to stop them and whatnot. It's not like taking over the world high stakes, but it's relatively low stakes, but it's not. But the things I absolutely love about this book are the friendships that develop. It's not your typical paranormal romance. I don't want to give too much away, but it's not your typical fated pairs paranormal romance. Oh, she gets the guy in the end, the guy gets a girl in the end. It's not that. It's absolutely brilliant. The food descriptions are phenomenal. Have a pastry or a snack or some kind of baked good beside you whilst you're reading this, because anytime there's a scene set in the bakery, she works in a bakery, you're gonna be hungry. Just do it. And yeah, the dynamics and the relationships between her and her family, between her and Con, who is the vampire, it is just absolutely brilliant. I would say like hands down one of my favorite vampire books all time. Brilliant. Right, next. Now I know this one has been mentioned a few times in various like favorite fantasies, favorite standalone fantasies, but like guys, it's a favorite amongst many people for a reason, and that is Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman. This is hands down my favorite Neil Gaiman story. Absolutely brilliant, particularly this edition, which is illustrated by Chris Riddell, who is one of my favorite illustrators. I mean, what's not to love? So, for anyone who's not familiar, this is the story of Richard Mayhew, yep, who just by chance he comes across a girl on the street in need of some assistance. He helps her out, and this one act of kindness basically leads to him entering London Below, and we then have this. It's a murder. It's kind of a murder mystery. There's definitely mystery elements to it. The girl Dor is being um, basically her family's been wiped out, and she is being hunted down. Has some of the best, some of my favorite villains in here, and it's just absolutely brilliant. If you don't want to read this, if you are more of an audio person, I would definitely recommend the BBC Radio play, which has James McAvoy as Richard Mayhew, and just a whole star-studded line of cast. It is absolutely brilliant. That was my first introduction to Neverwhere. I listened to it on a bus, an overnight bus going down to London, and I mean, I don't sleep when I travel. Why I chose an overnighter, I do not know. And it was absolutely brilliant. Just, I mean, I can't sing its praises enough. It's brilliant. Right, second to last. This is the book that started this video. This is the one I mentioned. So I'm not going to say too much about it because I did just mention it in my last video. And that is The Redemption of Althalis. Sorry. The window's like... It's not very light outside, but it's just light enough that everything is reflecting. But yeah, The Redemption of Althalis. This follows a thief who is basically hired to break into the house at the end of the world and steal a book. That is literally how it starts. It starts with a thief being hired to steal a book. And then follows your typical David Eddings plotline, essentially, where we discover that there's a big bad. We have to gather our band of unlikely heroes and travel about and figure out how to save the world. Has one of my favorite traveling mechanisms, where they basically, I think this is possibly like one of my first portal fantasies. I think this is portal fantasy. I think this counts. I don't know. I'm really bad at like all the terms and things. Where they basically, different doors in the house lead to different parts of the world, so they kind of use that to travel about, which is absolutely brilliant. I love it. This, if you're thinking about starting David Eddings, if you've never, this is a really good introduction to David Eddings, is I think what I'm trying to say. If you want to start him, but you don't want to commit to a 5-book series like The Bulgariad, which is the first one that any Eddings fan recommends, pick up The Redemption of Althalis. It will give you a really good idea as to how well you like his writing. I do believe it's the first one he wrote with his wife. I haven't read anything else that he wrote with his wife. I've only read the pre-David and Leah combo. But yeah, like it's brilliant. It's a really good introduction. It gives you a taste. If you like The Redemption of Althalis, you're definitely going to like The Bulgariad and The Elenium. If you don't, and you're like, nah, this is really not my style, then chances are you're not going to enjoy those. This, yeah, I never hear anyone talking about this, and honestly, I think it's a shame because it's brilliant. Also, the cat is a character. Like, come on, like one of the few cat characters we've got. So that has to work for something, right? Right, and now the last one, which has just recently been re-released, which I'm so happy about because it was almost impossible at times to get hold of, and that is The Last Unicorn by Peter S. Beagle. So I started with a book of a film. I'm now starting with the book that came before the film. Yeah, this has been made into an animated film back in the probably 80s again, which was absolutely brilliant. But the book is also just as wonderful, if not more so, definitely more so. And this basically follows a unicorn. She is the last of her kind. Up until now, she's just been, like, unicorns are solitary creatures, so up until now she's been just in her forest doing her thing, and then she happens to come across a couple of hunters, and she overhears them talking about how there are no unicorns left in the world, and if there were, they would be the last. So she then sets off on this mission to find the unicorns. we discover that, you know, the Red Bull drove them into the sea long ago. So it becomes a rescue mission essentially. We come across some absolutely wonderful characters. It is a story of, oh, how do I describe this? It is brilliant. It's wonderful. I first read this 10, 15 years ago, and I've read it several times since. Um, there is a love story in there, but it's not your typical one. It's it's just a story of banding together and doing the right thing, and it is just absolutely wonderful. And I'm so happy, so happy that it is being republished. Um, to the point that as soon as I heard, as soon as I went up for pre-order, I pre-ordered this copy. So this is obviously not the copy that I've read time and time again. That's upstairs, literally falling apart. This is the newest edition. And on a side note, the introduction by Patrick Rothfuss is the first thing that's ever made me go, huh, I maybe want to give him a try. So there's that going for it. But yeah, anyway, this has been a wee bit of a rambly recommendation list, which is, but yeah, these are my favorite standalone fantasy. Anyway, I'm going to stop rambling and I'm going to end this here. If you have any standalone fantasy recommendations, please leave them below and I will have a snoop. And in the meantime, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.